what's up, Planeswalkers? It's your boy K-Dog, back in Standard with another best of 3 list. This one we're playing Izzet Control. Control is not really something we'll play a whole lot of around here because it's not really fun to play against when people are, countering all your spells, killing every single thing that you play. But it's good to play sometimes. You want to mix it up. Definitely learning the Control playstyle, different playstyles is better, just so you can kind of be a better Magic player in general. And we got some fun new cards in core set, so we're just gonna kind of play around with them. And so this is a deck I've been working on. Excuse me a second. There we go. Not sure if it's 100% there, but it feels like it's there's definitely something here. So we're gonna kind of go over it real quick here. So starting off with 4 copies of Callous Dismissal, being able to return any non-land permanent to your owner's its owner's hand, and then you amass one, so you get a nice creature down to block for your planeswalkers and whatnot. And just having the flexibility of hitting any non-land permanent is nice, especially in game 1, and then you can kind of adjust your count of these in sideboard. A couple of Fire Prophecies here to deal 3 damage to a creature, and then we can put a card from our hand back into our library and draw a new card. So if you have too many lands, if you have a card that doesn't quite match up that doesn't match up very well with your opponent is doing, if you have multiple planeswalkers or removal spells you don't really need, then you can just kind of bottom it and get a fresh draw. So that's pretty cool. But just 2 copies because sometimes it's not always very good depending on the matchup. 3 copies here of Lava Coil, just the 4 damage, and exile removal can be very, very key in a lot of situations. Neutralize here and Ionize. We're kind of splitting these as counter spells. Ionize is nice because it deals 2 damage to your opponent while countering their spell at the same time. So that's pretty it's pretty evil. Neutralize is better though in some ways because you can cycle away, because a lot of times there's a lot of very aggressive decks in the meta right now that just kind of go under, and counter spells don't really do a whole lot against them, and so having a counter spell in your hand is just often kind of a dead draw a lot of times. So just being able to cycle that away and kind of draw into some removal or a planeswalker or something that can kind of help you is pretty nice. So that's why we're doing that split here with Ionize and Neutralize. A couple copies of Risk Factor. This is a card that typically sees play in like a mono red burn type of builds. It seems a little bit out of place because we're not really doing any direct damage to our opponent here, especially in the early turns. So your opponent's just gonna, even if you cast this on like say turn 3, then your opponent's gonna take 4 damage and be like, sure, that's fine, 4 damage, no problem. But however, you're gonna make them pay for it later on, so that's pretty cool. And once your opponent does see it, then you can jumpstart this, or you cast your second one, and you can start drawing some cards, which is pretty fantastic. And what's that? A couple copies here of Soul Sear, which I think is a pretty sweet new removal spell from core 21, 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker, and permanent lose indestructible until end of turn. So just having that flexibility of hitting creatures, planeswalkers, 5 damage, and the indestructible part, I think does make this a really fantastic option here. And especially when we're kind of a burn style deck a little bit, we definitely don't like life gain. So Tibalt here has a couple copies. Basically, we're kind of a planeswalker deck. So Tibalt kind of gets the party started here at 3 mana. Your opponent can't gain life, and we get to make a 1/1 devil token when it dies, deals 1 damage to any target. So it protects the Tibalt a little bit. And a couple copies here of Chemister's Insight. This is our second jumpstart card. 4 mana, instant speed, draw 2 cards. Kefnet here works really well in a spell-based deck. Since counter spells are kind of to a minimum, I think Kefnet works pretty well because it kind of doubles up your removal spells or your card draw spells. It's a 4/5 flyer for format, which is pretty great. And the fact that it's a god, so even if they try to kill it or exile it, you get to put it back into your library, 3rd from the top. So it's nice having that recursive threat. And whenever we draw our first card each turn, we can reveal it, an instant or sorcery card. We can copy it, and it costs 2 generic less mana to cast. So that's kind of how we double up our removal spells or card draw spells. Another new card here is Teferi, Master of Time. When I saw this card spoiled, I thought it was going to be like super busted, and it was just going to really potentially warp the meta. And that has not proven itself out to be the case yet, which is nice. But obviously, it's going to be around in Standard for another year and a half, basically, until, of course, that rotates out, just the way Core 21 will rotate out M20, I should say, will rotate out this coming fall. But as for now, Teferi is just kind of a fine card. It definitely does do well in certain situations, but the -3 of phasing is kind of medium against a lot of the decks that are out there. But we do have enough control elements that I think we're still going to get value out of it. And the other problem kind of with Teferi is the draw and discard. When you're like a control deck, the filtering is nice, obviously, but if you're dumping your hand just trying to kill your opponent's creatures so you don't die, and then you play a Planeswalker and now you're empty-handed, like what are you drawing and discarding at that point? We do have the Chemister's Insight. We do have the risk factor potentially help us kind of draw some cards, but that's not always going to be the case. So there's definitely times when the draw and discard is not as good unless you're like really heavily into card draw, and you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to have something to discard. So sometimes you want to hold on to those extra lands because that's typically how you're going to use the Teferi. But that's kind of awkward when you're playing like a control style deck because you're typically running up into 5 and 6 mana spells typically. And that's definitely the case here. A lot of our planeswalkers we're about to get to are 5 and 6 mana, and so we need those lands. We don't want to discard them, but you're just gonna have to figure out what you need and kind of read the board state to get the most out of its ability. And the fact that you can do this on your turn and your opponent's turn makes it pretty cool as well. And Kefnet obviously synergizes well with that because we can just copy the spell that we draw if it's an instant or a sorcery, and we get to keep the original in our hand while still getting to cast that copy of it for cheaper. So that gives us a nice card advantage as well. So that works well with Teferi, and of course discarding the jumpstart cards works fine because then we can always recast them later on. Another new card here from Core 21 is Experimental Overload. It's a 4-mana sorcery. Create an XX blue and weird creature token where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. Then you return an instant or sorcery card from graveyard to your hand. Then you have to exile the Overload. So it's sorcery speed, 4 mana, but it represents pretty fair amount of value. You get another way to put a creature down. If your opponent has been pretty light on creatures, you will kill all of them. Well, that gives you a creature to start attacking in with. It also just gives you a creature to block your planeswalkers with as well. So either way, I think it's pretty reasonable value because we do have a lot of planeswalkers here. So we want to, if you can kind of force them to spend the removal on your creatures and not on your planeswalkers, then that's always a plus. And then you get one of your spells back. Your Callous Dismissal, your counter spell, your Ionize, your risk factor, your Soul Sear, whatever the case may be. So it's a pretty solid value, I think. So 2 copies feels right. 3, 4 copies, didn't quite feel like it was really necessary. Rao, Storm, Conduit, another way for us to kind of double up on our spell, similar to Kefnet. Also lets us +2 to scry 1, and then whenever we cast or copy spells, we get to do 1 damage to an opponent or a planeswalker. So that's nice having that flexibility to choose planeswalkers as well. And you can -2 to copy an instant or sorcery and choose new targets for the copy. I was trying to run a couple copies here, but a lot of times Rao just felt a little bit underwhelming. So I just cut it down to 1 copy, and that kind of feels right to me. Just having that 1 copy, I think is nice. The scry and doubling up your removal spells feels pretty good as a single copy. And here's our Planeswalker payoff, of course. Sarkhan turns your Planeswalkers into 4/4 dragon creatures, and you can -3 to make a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. So that's pretty fantastic. And that's kind of where the risk factor comes into play. Your opponent takes the 4 damage because they think, oh, well, they're not really pressuring me or doing anything like that. And then a couple turns later, you drop a Sarkhan, and all of a sudden your Tibalt and your Teferi are swinging in for 8 damage. That 4 damage that took earlier from risk factor will be pretty effective all of a sudden. And so in some ways, we're kind of a Planeswalker tempo deck in that regard. We're trying to control the early game and then take over with these Planeswalkers as 4/4 creatures kind of in the late game. So maybe Rao Izzet Viceroy should be one of, and Sarkhan should just be like a 3rd copy. But I do like Rao Izzet Viceroy and definitely want to play with it before it rotates out. Because it's a pretty fine card. Saw tons of play kind of early on in its lifetime. It's a 5 mana, 5 loyalty, +1. Look at the top 2 cards, 1 into your hand, other into your graveyard. So it's a nice card advantage. You can -3 to deal damage to your creature equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard. So the fact that it says exile is what makes that -3 just super powerful, because we have the jumpstart cards, we have the experimental overload, and things like that. So just even if you've exiled something, you still get credit for it as far as the -3 goes. And the -8 is just pretty insane if you do get to that point, which definitely can happen. It's a lot of fun when you get to that point. We get an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, this emblem deals 4 damage to any target, and you draw 2 cards. That's just super powerful. And finally, at our top end here, we have 2 copies of Chandra, Awaken, Inferno to complete our Planeswalker package. 6 mana, 6 loyalty, can't be countered, so just amazing in pretty much any situation. +2 to give your opponent an emblem that deals 1 damage to them at their upkeep. You can -3 as kind of a mini board wipe, dealing 3 damage to each non-elemental creature. And you can -X to deal damage to a creature or a Planeswalker, and then have that permanent go to exile instead. And finally here, we got 2 copies of Niv-Mizzet Parun, the 5/5 Flying Dragon for triple blue, triple red. Can't be countered as well. And whenever you draw a card, it deals 1 damage to any target. And whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. If you've been playing Magic for a couple years, then you've definitely faced off against the Niv-Mizzet Parun, and just know how this card would just take over games. Like if you just untap with a Niv-Mizzet, you typically just won like 90% of the time. That hasn't really been the case as much now. We've got some fantastic enchantment removal, Elspeth Conquers Death, Banishing Light, things like that kind of mitigate that potential value that Niv-Mizzet represents. But there's still so many situations where this Niv-Mizzet is super, super powerful and just kind of game-ending. All right, so that's the deck. Let's go to the mana base real quick here. Just the 1 Castle Vantress. We don't really want to get too much into the late game. We always have things to do with, casting instant speed spells, counter spells, things like that. But we do want to close out the game quickly with our Planeswalkers, and I don't want to go too long, but we still need some. I think just the 1 Castle Vantress feels right as just a little bit of kind of a way to sink our mana to scry and kind of find what we're looking for to help us close out games when we do get into kind of those stall situations and maybe don't have any spells in hand to play. Trying to keep the mana base pretty much split because of things like Niv-Mizzet, so we're running kind of even number of blue and red sources, so 7 islands. Just the 8 mountains, 4 steam vents, 4 Temple of Epiphany, and we're going to go ahead and run 1 Labyrinth of Skophos. The problem with red burn is there's a lot of creatures that doesn't really hit. They get out of range from the the Soul Sears, the Lava Coils, and things like that. So Labyrinth of Skophos can kind of help us out in that situation by just removing it from combat. We'd have to spend 4 mana to do that, but it's definitely a price that we're willing to pay in certain situations to protect our Planeswalkers or just our life total. That's the main deck. Let's go to the sideboard here. Against the creature heavy matchups, you can bring a couple copies of Stern Dismissal. Also bouncing enchantments, so Thassa's or Heliod's, things like that can be pretty relevant, certainly. A couple of Negates and a couple Mystical Disputes for those other control and mid-range type matchups. Obviously, Mystical Dispute can be coming against Teferi in particular. And a couple copies here of Narset. We're running plenty of non-creature spells, but mostly it's just here for passives, so shutting down your opponent's ability to draw cards. Because a lot of times we can just easily take out Tibalt, put in Narset, and call it a day. For some more creature removal here, we have Flame Sweep for the really low to the ground style decks. And a couple copies here of Storm's Wrath that hit 4 damage to creatures and Planeswalkers. And then we really don't like the life gain at all. So 3rd copy here of Tibalt. And then also against those kind of control mid-range grindier matchups, we're running 2 copies here of Sublime Epiphany. Just all the modes on this are pretty fantastic. 6 mana instant speed, counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return an all-land permanent to its owner's hand. Create a token as a copy of target creature you control. Target player draws a card. So, not sure about the token part, but drawing a card, countering a spell, and bouncing a permanent all seem like pretty fantastic options here. 6 mana, that feels pretty reasonable, even if it's just those few options. And even if you can counter like a Hydroid Krasis, you can also counter that would that be a triggered ability, I guess, from casting it. So you get to counter the Krasis, counter them drawing and gaining life, bounce something that they have on the field back their hand because they probably tapped out to play it, and you get to draw a card in the process. I mean, that's pretty backbreaking right there. That's kind of like this is basically like a blue casualties of war. All right, so that's the deck. We'll jump into some matches, see how we do. All right, up against Adam the Stampede. The Nissa avatar. There we go. We have the Dismissal on 2 for whatever early creatures they play or permanents. Risk factor on 3 just to take them 4, and card advantage removal in Row. Seems reasonable. And 4 lands, all the colors. Second dismissal, perfect. Yeah, there's definitely a biased time to get to our Planeswalker package going. Hopefully they have a nice creature here that we can bounce. Yep. Now Selesnya, life gain. Nope. Goes to your hand. So definitely want to see a Tibalt here. Probably just dismissal again and just save risk factor for when we're don't have anything else to play, I guess. Season of Growth and Impassioned Orator. I mean, we can bounce the season, it might be worth it. Let's see what we draw here. We need to get into our creature removal for creatures. And if we find like a Lava Coil or something, then that would be pretty fantastic. And then we could definitely bounce the Season of Growth, swing for 2. Because if they find a land, they could Orator, Scry, potentially play a 1 or 2 mana spell, either an Aura or an instant or sorcery, and then get immediate value off the Season of Growth, or we just bounce it to their hand and force them to kind of decide how to play out their hand. I think that's probably the safer play. Then we have Chemister's next turn, hopefully find some removal. Alright, swing 2. So nothing else, we have Chemister's next turn. Into Rao on 5, and it's already up to 2. Once we play the Chemisters, it'll be at 3. So unless they have a way to grow the Orator, then we could deal damage to it, especially if they tap out. In a couple of turns, that's still 2 turns away, so that's asking a lot if they're running Season of Growth. Youthful Knight. Okay, so this is just some next level jank. Alright, so we'll actually play the Tibalt here, because definitely want to shut down their life gain if they think the Orator matters. And just run it like that. So we want to keep our Tibalt alive. So we'll see how they attack here, or if they choose to attack. A Barkhide Troll. So Chandra would be pretty amazing. They can still Season Growth, and they have white mana open. There's not too many spells in white to target. I mean, there's some, but they don't see a lot of play, so I don't imagine they have anything here at 1 white. And we still don't know if they're on the instant package or if they're on attack both. I mean, block here, block here. First strike kills the devil, and then when it dies, we ping the knight. So must have a 1 mana spell here in white, which they certainly could. They float the mana, and looks like they have something. They're trying to decide which creature to save. So we're losing one of these creatures. Okay, opponent, you have to decide. Should have factored this in before you went to combat. If you're not willing to take this loss, then maybe you just save it until you have a better attacks and string together some spells here. Again, we don't know if they're on instants or if they're on auras. Season of Growth could go either way. It's got to be a new player the way they're playing this. Okay, so the Youthful Knight goes down, and the Orator goes down. So they did all that just for nothing. They are tapped out. But Rao only has 2 spells, so it cannot kill the troll. But yeah, I think we still have to go for the Soul Sear just to keep their board clear. Season of Growth means that basically any deck that's running on like spells and auras, you just want to keep their board clear. as much as possible because they're just balancing creatures and spells. The last card is unknown. Well, we're going to go for the Izzet Viceroy, and we're going to try to kill this Healer's Hawk. And if that resolves, then we'll go ahead and swing in 1.
Let's see what you got.
So we're doing 3 damage to it thanks to 3 instant and sorcery spells. So if they have like a +2/+2 effect, that won't be enough. They need like a Giant Growth, or was it Growth Cycle? Does that have the same effect? +3/+3? So there's definitely things they could have to protect it. Okay, it is a Giant Growth. Thank you for finally casting that after all this time. Well, we can't block it, so we'll go ahead and attack. Which maybe we should have done that first. But we didn't know what they had, but now we know they're on. Looks like they're on instance, and so they're on a life gain. So Selesnya at life gain with Season of Growth just to be extra janky. That's a very cute opponent. That's very cute. So we need some board clears to deal with these creatures. They don't even. They didn't even. What? Let's actually get rid of the Hawk. We'll plus.
Ooh, let's see what we got.
Another removal spell. We'll take that. So if they would have need life gain to trigger the Johnny's Pride. Otherwise, if they attack him, we just block it and then kill it with the Dias trigger. So we'll go ahead and +1 first, just to see what we can find. A land, sure. And we do have some 6-mana spells, so we'll play it. And we're all set up with 3 blue, 3 red, so if we find a Niv-Mizzet or anything like that, we're set. We can Niv, and this is where the Jumpstart cards come in handy. So we'll just +1, discard one of them. Probably the risk factor. A second Tibalt. But since they're prioritizing life gain, I think we'll keep Tibalt number 2 in case they find like a Banishing Light or some removal spell. They're not finding anything right now. I don't think Castle Vantress is what we need here. Steam Vents. Also not what we need. Let's go ahead and Growl first. Top 2 cards. Overload. I don't think Neutralize does too much. We could protect our Planeswalker package, I guess. We'll +1, discard the... yeah, Steam Vents can go. We'll keep the island for additional discard effects. Let's Overload and get back a Lava Coil since they're it's going to hit pretty much all of their creatures. And pass turn. We'll just save the island as nice discard fodder for Teferi. Wow, our opponent is hitting all their lands. That sucks. We'll attack first. We'll plus.
Well, let's see what the wind blows in.
Round number 2. Doesn't seem like we need round number 2 here. Overload. We'll get back. We'll bring the Dismissal, so in case they find something that Lava Coil doesn't hit. Discard a mountain. Bastard. So now we're pretty much game over at this point. They have to scry, but we can just kill Lava Coil. We can bounce it with the Callous Dismissal. It just doesn't matter. Go ahead and plus. Risk factor can go. Chemisters. Yeah, let's kill it. Just remove any doubt. No, we'll not mess around with the Planeswalkers. We'll just attack and end the game. Okay, game 1 against Selesnya life gain, Season of Growth. So counter spells don't feel very strong. Risk factor didn't really feel very strong there either. Storm Drafts could be pretty solid. Obviously they have ways of getting around it, but that's fine. Want the Stern Dismissals. You can cast in response to them trying to instant speed on one of their creatures. I guess we'll just keep the Neutralize since it cycles. Just go for Negate to be more efficient, but I like these removal spells. The Prophecy and Lava Coil seem like they match up with most of what our opponent is doing. And I don't think I want to remove any of our Planeswalker package, so we'll just roll with that. Alright. It's pretty land heavy, but Chandra is amazing, and we do have the Dismissal here to kind of not only bounce something as a kind of a temporary removal, but also to put down a creature to block. And I'm sure we'll draw. I will trust the deck. We will draw into some good stuff here. Our opponent mulled to 6, so that's pretty sweet. Another Steam Fence. We already had 5 in hand. We didn't need another one. 5 lands, of course. So 3 of our 4 Steam Vents in our hand. Turn 2. Orator again. We'll dismissal that again. And we'll follow up with a Soul Sear. That's pretty cool. So we force them to replay it, and then we just Soul Sear it. We'd also just hold up instant speed and kind of see if they play something else we need to deal with. A Youthful Knight? Sure. So we'll hold up Soul Sear here, just see what they do first. If they want to tag in for 2, we'll take it. And we've got Chandra coming in 3 turns. They're just going for Season Growth. That's fine. And we'll just keep them off of creatures altogether. Probably go Temple here, just so we can stop drawing lands. Overload is nice. Get back a removal spell. I think we'll keep it. We need to buy a little bit of time to get through our Chandra on 6. Although, if we're doing that on 5, then we probably don't have mana to actually cast it if we're just going Chandra anyways. But it gives us a removal spell after we -3 her. So I think we'll just go ahead and do the Overload still and get back the Soul Sear and see what our opponent does next turn. Obviously no reason to attack. But having double Chandra is nice. If they get their life gain going, then this emblem is going to be a whole lot of good, but it's going to help once we kind of control their board a little bit better. Sentinel. And with 1 mana open, they can still have a like a giant growth effect. If they're not attacking in, I think we're just going to go for the emblem, and then we can kind of figure out what we're going to do next turn. I'm going to assume that they have a way to protect these creatures, a giant growth or something. I don't want to get punished for that. They'll still lose one of their creatures, but we definitely want to try to get them to maybe tap out and lose both of them. We'll lose our creatures in the process, but we don't care about our creatures because they're just tokens. Troll. They still have 1 mana open, but it's a white source. So we haven't seen any white instant speed spells from them yet. They could have a Light of Hope, was like a Moment of Heroism or something like that. There's a couple white mana instants that give a power toughness boost on end of turn that could go with Season of Growth, which I think are just single white mana. If they want to attack, we'll block. We don't want to lose our Chandra at all. I think we'll go that. Since we're going to -3 and lose our creatures anyway. And if they try to go for something in response, we have the instant speed interaction here with Soul Sear and Stern Dismissal, and they do not. Sweet. So we'll just go Temple, try to stop drawing lands. Prophecy is nice. We can kill something and get rid of a land. So definitely want to hold the second Chandra. That's gonna be pretty clutch. So So we got one emblem going, which is nice. Probably just looking to do a +1 again next turn, and we got the removal spells in hand. Angel of Vitality. I don't think bouncing Season Growth does much. We could bounce the Angel just to kind of like that, just to force them to spend their turn casting it again. Even though we have a removal spell for it. Multiple removal spells. Well, I should keep the Steam Vent just because it represents a card draw, so we can go for the Prophecy next turn on the Angel. Again, they might be able to protect it since we're only doing 3 damage. Any pump spell would kind of solve that. Sporeweb Weaver. Sure, you got protection from blue, hexproof from blue, but not from that. So they do get a 1/1 and a life, which is cool. Which is cool. I don't think we care about that token. Another land. We'll just keep giving you emblems. I guess we'll play Steam Vents and say go. Definitely holding on to the Prophecy for the Angel. If they protect it with an end of turn effect, draw a card, then we can just Chandra it on our turn. Feels pretty reasonable. I mean, them having cards in hand and mana is a little bit worrisome. Okay, Pridemate comes down. Alternatively, if they tap out for Angel, then we probably just minus to wipe their board. Okay, they just played right into it. Sure, we'll just take the Chandra minus here. You're gonna swing. You're gonna ignore Chandra. Try to attack our life total. Sure. Storm's Wrath does a trick as well, but I think we're fine just doing the minus here.
Everyone knows the bigger
And
explosions are more fun.
Again, we just want to hold on to lands for the Fire Prophecy. That pretty much hits all of their creatures. Barkhide Troll, obviously, you can have hexproof, especially with all this open mana. But Pridemate, Orator, etc. A 5/5 is a problem. But we'd have second Chandra here. They tapped out as well, so yeah, that's fine. Labyrinth, I think we will play, and then we will. Yeah, we want to keep their board clear. So Chandra is still alive at 1. I think we just are okay with that. I think we need to run the second one out there. We need to force them to have removal for this one, which we haven't really seen much in the way of, so I'm not sure. All right, up to 4 emblems. So at some point, you might just want to do. Run out Chandra number 2 just to get the emblems. Just get that second emblem going. They're at 6. Yeah, I think if we uptick, play Chandra 2, uptick again, then they will lose to the emblems because we'll give them 2 emblems next turn. Unless they can gain life here. So they have to gain some life this turn, or they are just dead. Well, they gained 3 life thanks to Gift of Paradise, which doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense in their deck. So since that's the case, I think we will just go ahead and save Chandra number 2 in case they do have a way to deal with our Chandra that's already on board here. And down to 4. So now they just kind of lose next turn to Chandra's emblems. So playing second one didn't really do a whole lot of good there anyway. Another Youthful Knight. Sure. Probably don't need the Storm's Wrath either, so we could have just played the Iowan, but we're not really doing too much with our turn anyway. We'll just fire that off. That resolved immediately. Let's go for the Sarkhan win. Give him an emblem just because. Plus, so Chandra, we'll go for the Chandra kill. Or a Sarkhan kill, if you will. Alright, pretty sweet. Okay, against Rugoberto. 1 land. It is a temple, but we are going first, so can't keep that. All the lands. Sure. I mean, we have Prophecy. I mean, if we go down to 5, what are we doing? So we'll keep it, and Vantress, I guess. Well, we'll keep. Well, we have Island, so Vantress represents late game value at least. So we'll just do that since we have Island and the events of Vantress to come in untapped. So that's fine. So if we play a creature, we have the Prophecy, and we can pitch one of these lands to maybe draw something else. Okay, Gutter Bones. I guess Ion can go. Labyrinth. It's okay. Lava Coil. So we can curve out for Chemisters next turn, but we might just have to Lava Coil something if they're on a mono black list. Like Knight of Ebon Legion is pretty nasty. And nothing else. Ooh, Callous Dismissal is fine. I think I'm fine with taking the hit. We'll Chemisters. We need to kind of dig through our library a little bit better, especially after that mulligan. And if they want to sink their mana into it, that's fine as well. It just gets one counter, so Lava Coil can still hit it. And we've got mana open to play both. So they get a plus. So 3, so it'll go up to 4 toughness. So again, that works out. Kefnet is pretty sexy here. We're doing some nice top end here, that's pretty cool. But definitely have to deal with this before it gets out of control. I still have access to Demonic Embrace thanks to its ability here. They can discard. Ooh, Rankle, that's nasty. What do we discard here? They don't go for the discard. Ral can kill it, so they have to have Rankle number 2. Kefnet can block it, and if they have removal, I think we just have to go for Ral and kill Rankle, and if they have an answer for it, then so be it. We keep our better chances of keeping Kefnet, Mizzet, or Chandra alive. And we're 1 land away from Chandra. We can Kefnet at any time. Depending on what they do, though, we may just want to Kefnet plus Dismissal, and that's probably what we're going to do. We have a Temple, so we need an untapped land here to do both. We have a Mizzet, so I think we'll have to go for the land play. So we'll go Kefnet. Oh, that took away our blue sources. Did not think about that. So maybe discarding the island earlier was a mistake. Sometimes I just go a little bit too fast. They definitely are likely to have removal. But if not, we have a 4/5 blocker, or we have a planeswalker. So, okay. So they have trample. If they want to, well, we're at 12, so kind of want them to attack Ral. Decline. We already have one of those. So next turn we can Niv-Mizzet. Don't need more lands. Just need more interaction here. Yeah, I think we just want to deal with this spawn here. At least slows them down. We need to put some pressure on them, even if they have a Rankle. Let's see, we have 1, 2, 3 blue, and we have 3 red. So yeah, well, Chemisters, we don't need this Temple. Probably draw a land anyway. Decline. Yeah, we'll reveal. So I get a free Callous Dismissal. Or 1 mana. Sweet. Sweet, sweet, sweet. It's like this kind of the mono black list that have been kind of going around. And our opponent scoops it up. I mean, we've seen these mono black lists do well in ranked play. The Demonic Embrace on the Rotting Regisar. The Rankle value is still alive and real. And the opponent just gave up. And especially after mulliganing to 5, that was a nice showing. So it's probably good enough to play in the lower levels of ranked. But I don't know how far it would get you. There was another thought to maybe doing like the kind of a, there we are, the kind of a more card draw effect, where you kind of leverage Niv-Mizzet's ability where you draw cards along with Teferi's activated ability to draw cards multiple times, you know, on your turn and your opponent's turn, and you know, maybe something like that could be interesting, especially with like a kind of a proliferate theme with that That Flux Channel that has seen no play since it came out. It's a 3-mana, I think it's like a human wizard. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can proliferate. That could be interesting with like a Teferi to really get to its -10 and just draw like millions of cards and play all the Niv-Mizzets. Maybe there's something there, but this feels like really hyper-focused on that interaction, and therefore it's probably kind of easy for your opponent to disrupt it. So I kind of want to spread out the love here and just want more of a kind of a Planeswalker package. So it's kind of nice that all of them kind of put in some work. Route Izzet Viceroy seems like it's kind of a forgotten Planeswalker. I think kind of some of that power creep has really made Route Izzet Viceroy a little bit overshadowed by some other things. And just the Izzet and Grixis colors not being as good as some of the other decks floating around. But the card advantage and the removal on this are pretty fantastic. The emblem is kind of almost game ending. It doesn't necessarily end the game on its own, but it will end the game within a couple turns, just 4 damage. Of course, Chandra's a horse. Niv-Mizzet can still be pretty powerful in the right matchups. Sarkhan, of course. I think I see Ral in any of those games. The Experimental Overload got some nice value there. And of course, Teferi is just a solid Planeswalker. We saw the value with Kefnet. Our opponent just conceded to that value. They didn't have removal, or they chose not to play it. And just if they did, you could have the option to just put it back into your library anyway. Tibalt put in some work against that life gain sort of weird thing they were trying to do. And yeah, just the dismissal, just being able to kind of tempo your opponent till you can find your Planeswalkers, get additional removal back with the overload, and then you got your Prophecy, your Lava Coil, and your Soul Sear removal package. Felt pretty strong. So kind of like how this deck is situated. Yeah, it's a control list, which isn't something we play a whole lot of, so it's kind of fun to do something a little bit different. So thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, make sure you jank with a purpose.